This is the first of my health-related episodes, during which I will share scientific information and elaborate in a simple and understandable way for all of us who are not medical doctors, scientists, or biochemists. My goal is to aid my fellow humans in their struggle to sustain their health or overcome chronic disease based on my personal experience while researching and reversing type 2 diabetes by myself. I hope that they can benefit from my experience by not having to reinvent the wheel. The first topic in this series are the foundations of health, something that medical doctors in my experience don't focus enough. Just like in college, we will not dive immediately into core issues, but we will first prepare our mindset and heart set to become conducive to health, and thus allow health to naturally emerge by sustaining the conditions which allow the body to thrive. Our lifestyle in our so-called Western civilization has become toxic to our well-being, and we are forced to take medication to heal ourselves when our health crumbles under the strain of everyday life. To make matters worse, according to my experience, that medical doctors are prescribing specific medication to address specific symptoms without trying to understand the bigger picture, although fortunately this trend seems to reverse. We shouldn't need to take medication except in emergencies. Unfortunately, many people in the West die of cancer, chronic and age-related diseases, as well as of degenerative diseases. So this should make us wonder why. We are living in a society with advanced technology and science, therefore unnatural deaths should not occur, right? Wrong. Technology and science are merely tools that humans use, and as such, they can be used for good, for bad, or not used at all. Context matters. Let's consider indigenous cultures in the past for a moment. People suffered from age-related diseases in the past as well, but they were capable to contribute to a community-driven society even in old age. Today, elderly people are often cast aside in our highly individualistic society, which is a sad synonym for ego-based society. Today, the stress that we are exposed to from almost everybody in our life is astonishing. No wonder our health suffers. Based on skeletal pathology, burial records, and early ethnographic accounts, we can reach many conclusions about the people who lived before us. For example, 30% of today's adults suffer from osteoarthritis, a chronic disease that affects joint health. That's a 2 to 3 times increase from the past. 9 to 10% of today's adults suffer from type 2 diabetes. That's a 10-fold increase compared to indigenous people in the past. Interestingly, I was told by a doctor that this disease is caused by high blood sugar and that the causes are unknown. That was 9 years ago. Today I know better. Not because I was told so, but because I was forced to perform my own research. I found out that high blood sugar is just a symptom among a whole lot of symptoms in this metabolic disease. The cause of type 2 diabetes is insulin resistance, which metabolic science tells us that it is the cause of many chronic diseases. Next on our list is cardiovascular disease. 12% of adults today suffer from cardiovascular disease. That's at least 5 times more compared to what indigenous people in the past experienced. Chronic respiratory disease affects 8% of today's adults. In contrast, that's 2 to 3 times more compared to indigenous cultures in the past. Finally, metabolic disease, which is a combination of obesity, hypertension, and dyslipidemia, affects 25% of today's adults. To clarify, dyslipidemia is basically a lot of fat in the blood that constitutes a high risk factor for heart attack and stroke. That is 10 times as high compared to the past. We can see that people in the past were healthier than we are today. There are several factors that point to differences in lifestyle as the fundamental cause of this development. First of all, most of us prefer high-calorie, low-nutrient diets in our hectic lifestyle within our highly individualistic society. This leads to an increase in type 2 diabetes, obesity, metabolic syndrome, and cardiovascular disease. They develop over time through excess caloric intake, which leads to insulin resistance, which in turn leads to atherogenic lipid profiles. These are characterized by high levels of triglycerides, low levels of high-density lipoprotein, cholesterol, and an excess of small, dense, low-density lipoprotein particles. Lipids are a group of organic compounds that include fats and oils. The body needs them to store energy, form cell membranes, and to produce hormones, but not in these abnormal amounts. This lipid pattern is bad for our health and may lead to cardiovascular disease. Left unchecked, these conditions will not reverse themselves on their own without a conscious choice on our part to restore our health. We have forgotten the wisdom in the old saying, "We are what we eat." Next on the list of factors affecting our health is physical inactivity. This inactivity is not merely restricted to lack of exercise. We use cars to commute to work or sit in the bus, while most job roles require us to sit down. This leads to osteoarthritis via weight gain, cardiovascular disease, and metabolic syndrome. This is caused by reduced energy expenditure that leads to weight gain as well as poorer vascular health. The term vascular refers to our veins and arteries as well as the network of our lymphatic system, which connects organs and other body tissues and circulates lymph, a clear fluid containing immune cells. Another lifestyle factor that's bad for our health is chronic tobacco use and vaping. This habit may lead to chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is a progressive lung disease that causes breathing difficulties due to airflow limitation, as well as cardiovascular disease and certain cancers. The toxins inhaled through tobacco smoke and vaping devices don't just contain nicotine, which is the addictive substance that makes smoking pleasurable. Nicotine is highly addictive. This addiction can be as strong as other addictions associated with other substances, making it difficult for individuals to quit without support and treatment options. The inhaled toxins cause chronic airway inflammation and endothelial damage. Inflammation is the body's natural response to injury, infection, and disease, and these toxins are triggering it. Endothelial damage is the damage caused to the endothelium, which is a thin layer of cells lining our blood vessels, causing high blood pressure, inflammation, and a higher risk of blood clots. Chronic stress and disrupted sleep patterns are also affecting our health in a negative way. Your doctor might have told you that over time they lead to high blood pressure, metabolic dysregulation, and to the emergence of substances indicating inflammation in the body, like C-reactive protein and erythrocyte sedimentation rate. Bad sleep makes us prone to bad eating patterns, often causing accelerated weight gain, insulin resistance, increased risk of type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular problems. I'm reminded of the habit I had in the past, waking up in the middle of the night and raiding the fridge. Now, I understand why. Let's explain the terminology. Insulin resistance, in simple terms, is the outright refusal by cells to obey the hormone insulin that asks them to accept glucose and convert it to energy. The body produces glucose by breaking down carbohydrates from the food we eat. If there's too much glucose in the blood, the body is stressed, because there's fuel in the bloodstream that's not utilized by the cells and over time becomes toxic within us. Yes, glucose, which is a type of sugar, is a toxic substance. So, the body feels that we need to cope with this stress. The mechanism of cortisol-mediated insulin resistance can be summed up like this. The body is under profound stress trying to get rid of excess glucose and is attempting to enhance the restoration of balance through the release of cortisol, which is a stress hormone. Suffice to say, although it lacks the scientific precision I would prefer, because there are other factors involved as well that would not fit into this episode, the body is trying to restore its health from a disease which we ourselves have caused and actively sustain with inappropriate food. Eating appropriately and respecting our body in the process is a responsibility which we take very lightly and is burdening the body with increased effort to deal with the consequences of our own bad choices. On one hand, insulin is trying to persuade the cells to burn the massive amount of glucose that's circulating in the blood. And on the other hand, imagine a state of disorder where another part of the body feels that we are under stress and therefore need more energy to cope with that stress. This is accomplished by the liver, which releases its glucose stores to the bloodstream, compounding the problem. This is a major escalation within the body with two hormones, cortisol and insulin, working essentially against each other. This development leads to increased insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. Nature never intended us to eat a lot of refined food items containing so much sugar. These carbs don't exist naturally and are dangerous to our health if we consume them in large amounts. Therefore, if we want to avoid insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, and especially if we want to heal from and reverse type 2 diabetes, we need to adopt a low-carb or minimum-carb diet and stick to this diet with an iron resolve. I cannot stress its importance enough, as the clear signals such a diet sends throughout the body will counteract inflammation, lower blood sugar level, decrease insulin resistance, and restore hormonal balance. Dietary carbs are the cause of insulin resistance. If you want to put out a fire, first you stop pouring gasoline into it. Isn't it obvious? I will produce another episode about insulin resistance going into more detail, expressing everything in simple terms. Finally, environmental factors play also a negative role in our health. Air quality has deteriorated immensely. The air that we breathe is filled with pollutants and endocrine-disrupting chemicals messing with our hormonal balance. This leads to respiratory disease and metabolic dysfunction. Particulate matter, which is comprised of unnatural, tiny, solid or liquid particles that are suspended in the air, is causing lung inflammation, which is the body's natural response to injury, infection, and disease. Chemicals are disturbing our hormonal balance, either by mimicking our own hormones or altering their levels. The repercussions are affecting the whole body, from thyroid dysfunction to metabolic disease and even testosterone production, causing infertility in men. We can now see that our living conditions are much worse than those of our ancestors. They ate whole foods and didn't consume refined carbs. They were forced to be active in the form of hunting and gathering to sustain themselves. Air pollution did not exist in the past, and the intermittent exposure to smoke from a wood fire was negligible for the health of our ancestors. Their social structure was community-driven and made them resilient to all forms of stress, whereas today everybody is basically left to mostly fend for themselves. Our way of living is dangerous to our health, and many times it becomes lethal. We need to find ways to mitigate the toxic effects of our society and lifestyle on our body, our mood, and on our very soul. The bottom line is that modern Western societies show substantially higher frequencies of degenerative and chronic diseases compared to indigenous populations of the past. The magnitude of such increases in frequencies aligns closely with lifestyle shifts, dietary excess, inactivity, smoking, stress, and environmental toxins, indicating that contemporary habits have indeed exacerbated the conditions under which these diseases flourish. This concludes this health-related episode for this week. I will aim to produce one episode weekly. Thank you for listening. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to help me share my health-related experiences to serve my community in this way.